What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, and obviously we are a Seattle Seahawk channel around here, but we like to keep an eye on the division rivals because what they do does have a fairly direct effect on the Seahawks. I mean, when they go up, we tend to go down. When they go down, we tend to go up. That's just how it works. So I'm not going to ignore this latest report. Comes from multiple locations. This particular tweet I have on screen is from Jordan Schultz of the Schultz Report. I saw it from many other places as well, however, and it concerns the San Francisco 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk. And I'll tell you, over the last week, there have been multiple moments where a lot of people have indicated that the trade of Brandon Aiyuk to some other team, we don't exactly know which one, was a done deal. I've heard Pittsburgh, heard New England. New England's apparently out because Aiyuk doesn't want to go there. I guess the Commanders are kind of out because I haven't heard anything about them for a while, but they were initially in the conversation. Denver was like a super sleeper team that could get involved. There were one or two other teams as well. But there were moments where it seemed like we're just waiting for Schefter to put it out there. Once Schefter puts it out, it's official, but it never actually got done. And now we have the latest. So Schultz tweets that Aiyuk recently had a sit-down meeting with Kyle Shanahan and others in the organization where some open and candid thoughts were expressed. The two sides have since restarted negotiations on a long-term deal, and there is some optimism that Aiyuk could remain in San Francisco. Situation remains very fluid, but a sudden development. And to be clear, as recently as a few days ago, people in the Niners organization were speaking as if Aiyuk was gone. Like they knew it was going to happen. They just didn't know exactly when and where exactly he'd go. But they acted as if it was a done deal. And this is very much a pullback on that narrative. So let's talk about this for a little bit. We've definitely talked a lot about the Brandon Aiyuk stuff this off season. I've expressed my thoughts on it, and many people in many comment sections have expressed their thoughts on the Aiyuk stuff. I maintain my original position, which is as a Seahawks fan, as someone who roots for the Seattle Seahawks, I think it is better for us if Aiyuk leaves, unless the trade is an absurdly lopsided one, like the Steelers trade that got put on the table, where the Niners would get like two good players and a first round pick. Unless it's something like that, I think you want Aiyuk to go. And my argument is based off two pretty simple reasons. Number one, the Niners are trying to win the Super Bowl right now. As a Seahawks fan, I don't want the Niners to win the Super Bowl, so therefore, I want things to happen that make it less likely. And if the 49ers lose Brandon Aiyuk in a trade, because Brandon Aiyuk is an extremely good wide receiver, he made All-Pro second team last year and had over 1,300 yards, 75 catches. The year before, he had a 1,000-yard season. Again, All-Pro second team. And the receiver position is loaded right now. And I know maybe he doesn't make that team if Justin Jefferson doesn't get hurt, but Aiyuk is very, very good. And even like early in his career, back in 2020, when he was still playing with Jimmy Garoppolo, he was productive. He wasn't the stud that he is now, but this is a very productive player. And by the way, he missed a game last year. If he plays all 17 games, he probably gets to 1,400 yards. So this is an extremely good player. You're not going to be able to replace him in a trade. You're not going to trade Brandon Aiyuk and get Justin Jefferson back. You're not going to trade him and get CeeDee Lamb back. You're going to be getting back maybe another receiver that's much lesser than Aiyuk, like an Amari Cooper. And I like Amari Cooper, but he's no Brandon Aiyuk right now. And draft capital. And the thing about draft capital is it's not going to matter for another year. That draft capital is a chip you cannot cash until next season. And next season, things may have completely changed in San Francisco, and those chips might be good, but they might be just there to replenish a really depleted core rather than adding on to a really solid core. So, unless it was some ridiculous, obscene trade where they do get some super blue chippers back, which I don't think is a realistic possibility, then I wanted him to get traded for that simple reason. He's really good, and he's really good right now. So I don't want the Niners to be able to go into this year with their full allotment of weapons. It's that simple because their window is presumably going to close at some point in the next year or two. So let's get some of the talent out of there, some of their best talent out of there, while the window is supposed to still be open. Even if they traded him to Pittsburgh and got George Pickens and some draft capital back. Like, Pickens is good, but he's not Brandon Aiyuk good. Not even really close, I don't think. So there's that. And then you have the other factor of, like I've said before, Brandon Aiyuk is the one skill player on the 49ers. The one, well, I'll say player that is around the quarterback, right? The non-quarterback offensive players who is young and is going to have a long career ahead of him and might even get better over the next couple of years. You can't say that about anybody else. Like Brandon Aiyuk, he is currently 26 years old. Generally speaking, you would assume that a player that is 26 years old has his best years in front of him. At the very least, he's going to be the player that he was last year when he had, again, 1,300 yards in 16 games. So you take a look at that and you're like, okay, that's a guy who should be an elite receiver for the next 4 or 5 years. That's how the NFL typically works. And then you look at the other star players on that offense. And again, we're not talking about Brock Purdy here. I'm talking about the guys around the quarterback, because even the biggest Brock Purdy fan out there would tell you that Brock Purdy benefits tremendously from what is around him. So what is around him? You got Christian McCaffrey. He just turned 28, which doesn't sound that bad until you remember that he's a running back. And while we're at it, let's not forget that this is a guy who's already been through a phase of his career where he couldn't stay healthy. He played 10 total games across 2 years in 2020 and 2021 after making his first All-Pro first team in 2019. And then he came to San Fran, and obviously things have gotten a lot better. He was much healthier since getting to San Francisco. But, I mean, the miles are adding up. He put big miles on his body in Carolina. He had a season where he had over 400 touches, which tends to be a death knell. And last year, he had, 300, almost 350 regular season touches in 16 games. And then he also had 3 playoff games where he had, 85 touches, over 80 touches. And that's combined with the playoff touches he had the previous year as well. So not only is he getting those regular season miles, he's getting those postseason miles on top of the miles he already put on his body when he was in Carolina. And they, quite frankly, used him way too much. So how much longer is the Christian McCaffrey stuff going to last? Probably not any more than another year or two. And even this year, I expect to see some decline. That's just how the position works. And McCaffrey's done a remarkable job staying healthy over the last year and a half since he got to San Fran, but everything ends badly, or else it wouldn't end. You got Deebo Samuel, and he's also 28. He's going to be turning 29 before the end of the season, which, again, doesn't sound that bad, but think about the way Deebo Samuel plays football. He plays football kind of like a running back. In fact, one of the things that supposedly held up his contract negotiations couple years ago was that the team wanted to use him more like a running back, and he didn't want that because he wanted to try to preserve his career. But, Deebo is a guy who's missed a little bit more time over the last few years. He's never played a full season. He's always missed at least a couple of games each year. And look at the production over the last 2 years. It has clearly slipped. He had 1 year where he was on top of the world. 2021 had 1,400 yards. Led the league in yards per reception. Yak Beast, one of the best receivers in football that year, made All-Pro first team no problem. Since then, he started to miss a little bit of time. We know he plays through injuries a lot, and his production has just been way down. He hasn't even been a Pro Bowler the last 2 years, not even really that close to making the Pro Bowl. And they're still using him as a rusher. You can see over the last 2 years combined, he's got about 80 rushes, which not quite as much as he did in 2021, but still a pretty good amount. So those miles are adding up. He is still a guy who takes a lot of contact. And much like we said with McCaffrey, he's building up those playoff miles as well. So this is a player who is on paper 28, but physically he might be closer to 31. So that's not going to last much longer. Arguably, it's already over, really, because the last 2 years have been lackluster for his production. George Kittle, he's already on the wrong side of 30. He's going to turn 31 after the first month of the season here. So he's getting up there. And think about the way George Kittle plays. Think about the way he blocks. Think about how physical a player he is. Not going to last too much longer. I mean, he's missed a little bit of time over the last few years, right? He missed one game last year. Last year he was pretty much a full season, but the year before that he missed 2 games. The year before that he missed 3. The year before that he missed half the season. And again, he's adding up playoff miles as well. So this is a tight end that has played with very little concern for his well-being, very little concern for his body, thrown himself around, and been a fantastic player. But how much longer is this going to keep up? These tight ends that play this way don't tend to last that long. I know that he only entered the league in 2017. That doesn't sound like that long a time, but this is not Jimmy Graham here. Jimmy Graham played like a receiver, so he could play on and on and on and on. A guy like George Kittle, the way he plays, you're not really going to see a super long career in all likelihood. And then you got, I'd say even the big one, Trent Williams here. Trent Williams just turned 36. By the way, another guy looking for a new contract. So I'm looking at this. I'm looking at all the miles he's put on his body over his career. He's played in 178 career games, started almost all of them. Last few years, already starting to miss a handful of games here and there since he got to San Fran, missing 2 games, missing 2 games, missing 3 games, missing 2 games. So this is their one really good offensive lineman, by the way. And, he's asking for a new contract as well. You can tell they're gun shy about giving it out to him because they know what's coming. I mean, it may already be here this season. This is a guy who just turned 36. Where's it going to go? If you could even throw Jake Brendel into this, and Jake Brendel's not that good, but this is a guy who's going to turn 32 before the Niners play their first game this year. He is a guy they gave a non-trivial contract a couple years ago, and I know I want to stress this, I know he's not some great player, but he is their starter at center for the last couple of years. He has been mostly okay. He's been passable. Like, this is a guy who's going to get worse at this point. He's older, doesn't have a ton of miles on him, but he wasn't that great to start with. If anything, last year he was kind of a disappointment, and I think a lot of Niners fans would like to move on from him. But I see a lot of guys on this Niners offense headed in a negative direction, and then I see Aiyuk as the one guy, along with possibly Purdy, the quarterback, who can get better, who is headed in that positive direction. Of the guys who are proven, obviously there are guys on that Niners team that are young who just haven't proven themselves. But of the guys that we know are blue chip studs or borderline studs or all pros or whatever moniker you want to put on it, Brandon Aiyuk is the one guy who could be a problem 3, 4, 5 years from now. He could be a problem 6, 7 years from now for all we know. And not that we know what kind of contract Brandon Aiyuk is going to get, but based off what I've heard, it's going to be somewhere around like 30 to 31 million a year. I don't consider that to be unreasonable for a guy who's been this productive over the start of his career. I mean, these are close to DK Metcalf levels of early career production. Like, you can go to the contracts for receivers right now in the NFL. Justin Jefferson sets the market with 35. CD's probably going to get very close to that soon here. A.J. Brown, 32. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 30. Tyreek Hill, 30. Jalen Waddle, 28 and a quarter. Like, if Aiyuk gets 31 million a year or so, I don't consider that to be some gross overpay. Now, a lot of people in my comments when I was talking about the Aiyuk stuff a while ago, they've said, I'd rather the Niners keep him and give him a cap-crippling contract. And, I mean, it's a lot of money, but I don't consider it to be a critical overpay. I don't look at this and go, yeah, that would set that franchise back really, really badly, because it's a gross overpay for a player who doesn't deserve it. No, he deserves it. And if they gave him that $31 million a year, of course it would hurt them going down the line, which is why they're very hesitant to do it, because they have to play Purdy. They might have to do something with Trent Williams. They got some other contracts eventually coming due. But as a player, he's worth it in my mind. All right, so all options back on the table. Let me know what you guys think down below. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Maybe another video later today, but more than likely I'll just be on Twitch later tonight. And see you guys tomorrow. We got a game. We got a game. like 24 hours away.